and suicides.
Indonesian Health Minister Siti Fadila Supari stated that 150,000 people die every year in the country due to climate change-induced illness.
Dr. Jeffrey Demain of the University of Alaska explained that climate change was beginning to affect public health in the northernmost U.S. state, with more vector-borne illnesses.
A recent report from doctors in the British Medical Association, or BMA, states that global warming could introduce diseases such as malaria to the United Kingdom, as well as disorders such as skin cancer and sunstroke resulting from increased heat waves.
Doctors for the Environment Australia have released a report explaining the serious effects of climate change on human health, from heat-related and extreme weather illnesses to increased allergies and diseases carried by mosquitoes.
Climate change-induced drought, biofuels, and demand for meat are creating food insecurity, unrest, and hunger. Reasons:
UK newspaper, The Guardian, states eating meat is a main cause of world famine and malnourishment. In an article, Why Vegans Were Right All Along, non-vegetarian investigative journalist George Monbiot explains how demand for meat by the world's wealthy pushes the price of grain too high for the less fortunate. Because it takes over 5 pounds of grain to create 1 pound of meat, every meal, including meat, directly takes food out of the mouths of the poor.
The head of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, Dr. Rajendra K. Pachari, said that climate change is endangering food security, due in part to melting glaciers.
Lester Brown, president of the U.S.-based Earth Policy Institute, states that the demand for biofuels is also pricing the less fortunate out of the market, as farmers plant and sell crops for fuel instead of food.
With rainfall having decreased by 20% over the past 35 years and reserves at 10% of capacity, the island of Cyprus is experiencing a historical water shortage.
UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, Jean Ziegler, calls for a halt on the production of current-generation biofuels, saying they are a crime against humanity because they are causing global food shortages and leading to global hunger.
UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has asked for a second look at biofuels as an alternative energy source, in light of the effect their production is having on global food prices.
Current status.
The rice-producing nations of India, China, Oman, or Vietnam, and Egypt are placing export limits on rice, pushing prices up even farther.
Food riots have erupted across the world, from Mexico to Egypt, from Mauritania to Haiti, with several people dying in breadlines in Egypt. In India, many millions have reduced their meals from 2 to 1 per day. And in El Salvador, the meals are less than half now compared to 2 years ago. Solution 1. Reduce methane. Reducing our methane footprint may be the most important step we can take to rapidly halt the pace of climate change and buy us critical time to heal the environment.
NASA climatologist Jim Hansen says that we may be able to save the Arctic sea ice if we reduce methane. He states it's very important to realize that it's not only carbon dioxide. Dr. Hansen explains that methane is having a greater impact on warming the Arctic than CO2. Methane is at least 25 times more potent than CO2.
The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, lists the #1 source of human-caused methane as raising animals for food, followed by landfills, coal mining, and leaks in natural gas systems.
The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization estimates animal raised for meat account for 37% of human-caused methane.
Avoid eating meat. Earth scientists across the globe state that the single biggest step an individual can take to reverse global warming is to stop eating meat. Dr. Chris Rapley, director of London's Science Museum and former Antarctic survey leader, advocates vegetarianism, veganism to save the planet, saying that it uses far less energy than a meat-based diet. Therefore, a key aspect of the climate change solution is vegetarianism, veganism. An EarthSave.org report, How Environmentalists Are Overlooking Vegetarianism as the Most Effective Tool Against Climate Change in Our Lifetimes, states that methane should be acknowledged as an important cause of global warming, one that could be easily reduced if people adopted a vegetarian-vegan diet. Solution 2. Government and media to encourage vegetarian-vegan diets.
Animals raised for meat create more emissions than all the transportation in the world combined. A report published by the Livestock Group within the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization found that livestock accounted for 18% of total greenhouse gas emissions. The report further stated that growing animals for food was so damaging to the environment that reducing their impact should be a top environmental policy for all governments.
According to environment reporter Andrew Revkin of the U.S. newspaper The New York Times, our food choices are also essentially energy choices to some extent. And actually, in terms of vegetarianism, there are other values that are in there as well. There is a lot of water. There is a lot of pollution that results from large-scale farming. So eating down the food chain is something many scientists feel in a growing global population is something that would be important.
Dr. Kirk Smith, professor of global environmental health at the University of California at Berkeley, member of the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, states that governments should tax meat to reduce its consumption and bring down methane levels.
Formosan, or Taiwanese, Minister of the Environmental Protection Administration, Mr. Winston Dang, recommends that people should eat less meat in order to protect the planet from global warming and to conserve water and land resources.
German legislator Renat Künast recommends changing agricultural policies to halt climate change, including a reduction in the consumption of milk and meat products.
Senator Andrew Bartlett of Queensland, Australia says, there is no easier, cheaper, and more immediate thing we can do to significantly reduce our personal contribution to greenhouse emissions than to cut the amount of meat and dairy products that we consume.
The Camden City Council in London is proposing to ban the serving of meat at its staff cafeteria as part of efforts to reduce emissions.
Canadian journalist Kate Hartfield suggested that Canadian provinces begin taxing meat to reduce greenhouse emissions, saying that we talk about carbon dioxide so much, we forget that it's not the only greenhouse gas or even the most dangerous one. Livestock rearing does release carbon into the atmosphere, in particular through the raising of forests. Cattle need a lot of land and food, but that's nothing compared to the scary amounts of methane and nitrous oxide emitted by cattle herds and manure.
Mr. Pa Usman Jarju, Director of Water Resources in Gambia, stated, our diet system also needs to change. If we go in for vegetarian type of diets, that would also contribute immensely to save the planet.
Per Holmgren, Swedish television meteorologist and lecturer on climate issues, stated, if more and more people eat more and more meat, that will create a big problem. Because of the energy, because of the fact that some of these animals are actually eating food that we could eat, and also the problem of the animals creating greenhouse gases.
A New York Times article written by Mark Bittman, a non-vegetarian, explains the detrimental cost of meat consumption to our planet, our health, and to the poor.
Solution 3. Adopt zero carbon standards.
Dr. Arjun Makhijani, president of Washington, D.C. USA think tank Institute for Energy and Environmental Research, reports that it is possible for even a large economy such as the U.S. to go carbon neutral by using existing technologies. He states, a goal of zero CO2 is necessary to minimize harm related to climate change.
The cost of wind energy today is comparable to nuclear energy without the toxic waste or security issues.
Transportation accounts for 13% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Environmentalist and founder of the Step It Up Foundation, Bill McKibben, states that aside from walking, riding a bike, or taking public transportation, electric plug-in vehicles, scooters, bikes, and trains appear to be the most environmentally friendly solutions, given existing technologies.
Offset programs through organizations such as carbonfund.org are available to help reduce carbon emissions.
Monaco offers cash incentives to her citizens to encourage the purchase of green cars.
Conserving energy is the cheapest, fastest way to bring down energy usage, including putting in triple glazed windows, sealing all leaks, and insulating your home.
Install solar panels for electricity and a solar water heater.
Solution 4. Reforestation.
300 climate experts from around the globe signed a declaration at the UN's Climate Change Conference in Bali, stating, if we lose the forest, we lose the fight against climate change.
Reduce your junk mail. The average household in the U.S. receives enough junk mail and catalogs to deforest the Rocky Mountain National Park once every 4 months. Companies such as www.greendimes.com help people to reduce over 90% of junk mail and replant one tree for each catalog that is canceled.
In Owen Sound, Canada, the Trees Ontario group teaches people tree planting techniques and introduces them to the Managed Forest Tax Incentive Program, which offers up to 75% reduction in property taxes for tree planting to offset global warming.
On April 1st, 2008, letter from Dr. James Hansen to Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd states, we are at a point where bold leadership is needed, leadership that could change the course of human history. Aggressive, near-term fostering of energy efficiency and climate-friendly technologies is an imperative for mitigation of the looming climate crisis. Feasible actions now could still point the world onto a course that minimizes climate change.
We have to save this planet so that we'll be able to stay first. Because if the ice all melt, if the pole all melt, and then if the sea is warm, then the gas might be released from the ocean, and we all might be poisoned by the gas from the ocean.
Save our planet.
Go veg. Be green.
For more urgent details, please see www.suprememastertv.com.